I've been living and working in Las Vegas for almost 2 decades. I've done a little bit of everything here. Valet, bartending, and yeah, I even gave dealing a try for a while. That one didn't stick. When you put that many nights into this city, you end up collecting stories the way other people collect postcards. Some are ridiculous, some are sad, and a few are the kind of things you wouldn't believe actually happened if you hadn't seen them with your own eyes. For every wild story and detail I tell you, there are a dozen more tales my coworkers and friends have passed along. Little rumors, near misses, and full-on legends that get retold until the edges get frayed. I'm going to share a mix of the things I personally witnessed, the stories friends swore were true, and a few long-running Vegas rumors that people still whisper about. Take them with a grain of salt. Memories in this town are slippery, and the details tend to stretch with time. Because some of these stories involve other people, and in a city filled with celebrities, contracts, and NDAs, I've changed or left out certain details to protect privacy. Names, exact dates, and specific spots are edited or omitted where needed. That doesn't mean the core of each story was altered. The events and their impact are true to what I was told or what I saw. I'm just being careful not to point fingers or drag folks into trouble. So yeah, the essence of these stories is the same, even if a few minor pieces are blurred on purpose. What happens in Vegas, as they say, tends to stay in Vegas. But some of it's too good not to share. All right, let's get into the first one.
Story number 1. The man who went all in on his final hand. This one stuck with me for a while. It happened a couple years ago at the Palms. Late, the kind of night when the casino hums with uneven energy. Some people are dancing around a surprise win, others are too drunk to notice they've already lost, and a handful are hunched over tables trying to claw their way back to even. I was in the low-stakes blackjack area, just killing time and socializing, when something across the room kept pulling my eye. Over by the high-limit tables, there was a player who looked, at first glance, like he didn't belong in that scene. Not in a sketchy way, but in an odd, quiet way. Clean cut, well put together, maybe in his early 30s. No gaudy watch, no buddies clustered around him. Just him, the dealer, and a tower of black chips stacked in front of him like a little dark monument. At first, he played like any other seasoned gambler, measured, precise. But the stack wasn't stable. Every few hands it inched down. Not in one dramatic bust. It was slow, almost surgical. 500 here, 1,000 there. It was the sort of bleeding that makes you think someone isn't watching the numbers so much as watching something slip away from them. Curiosity finally got the better of me, and I wandered closer when I was done at my table. That's when the little telling moments showed up. Between deals, he'd mutter under his breath, not angry curses, not the loud self-confidence of someone chasing a streak, but small, repetitive lines. Things like, last hand, or just one time. It came off less like bravado and more like someone talking themselves down from a panic. There was a tightness in his jaw, a certain stillness in his hands. You could feel the tension like static in the air. Then he did the thing that made the room stop. He pushed everything forward. Not a token wager, the whole stack. I couldn't be sure of the exact number, but it had to be at least 15 grand. The dealer glanced up, raised an eyebrow like any pro would, and asked if he was sure. He nodded once, slow and certain, like this was the one moment he'd been gearing toward all night. She dealt, he opened to an 11. Without a second's hesitation, he doubled down. The table went quiet, and that way only casinos can. Other players paused mid-chew of their drinks. Even the nearby high rollers looked up. The dealer slid him a single card. A 9. 20. The dealer revealed her own hand, an 18. He won. The breath he let out afterwards was the kind of exhale that tells a different story than celebration ever could. It was relief, but not joyful, more like the easing of something you'd been holding too long. He gathered his chips, stacked them with the same methodical care as before, nodded to the dealer with a kind of flat appreciation, and walked away. No second bet, no lingering. As he passed, I heard him murmur under his breath, "Rent's covered." That line has followed me. Did he literally risk rent money? Was he trying to save a place he could lose without the table flipping? Or was rent a shorthand for something much bigger? A mortgage, a debt, a promise he'd been clinging to? I don't know. What I do remember is the way he looked as he left. Calm in posture, but hollow in his face. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt more than anything like survival.
Story number 2. The Low Roller Adult Film Star.
One night, I found myself walking into a bargain joint on Fremont after a dinner with some friends. The El Cortez, I think it was. You know the type. Sticky carpet that smells like stale beer, $5 minimums that attract locals stretching their last 20, and a pit boss who looks like he's been clocking in since the Carter administration. I hadn't gone there expecting much. I was nursing a small bankroll, killing time, just playing cheap hands to see how long I could make it last. Then a couple slid into the empty seats at my table, and the energy shifted. The woman caught my eye first. She had that almost glamorous but not quite look, like she'd once been stunning but had chased it back to the plastic surgeon too many times. Overfilled lips, obvious implants, a little too much sculpting in the cheeks. Attractive, yes, but in a way that carried a certain exhaustion. Her boyfriend, though, he looked familiar in a way that nagged at me until it finally clicked. He was an adult film performer, one I recognized from countless videos floating around online. Not for his acting chops, obviously, but because his face had been seen millions of times. And I remember thinking, what the hell is this guy grinding out hands at a $5 table in one of the cheapest casinos on Fremont Street? He was an adult film actor with millions of views to his name, the kind of face plenty of people would recognize, even if they'd never admit it. And yet there he was in downtown Vegas, not at some sleek strip property, but in this sort of side casino that doesn't get too many 5-star reviews. At first I thought maybe he was just laying low, keeping humble. But then the cards turned against him, and with every lost hand, his attitude darkened. He wasn't just muttering about bad luck, he was snapping at his girlfriend, scolding her whenever she lost a hand, as if she was wasting his money instead of her own. The louder he got, the more uncomfortable the table became. Players shifted in their chairs, glancing at each other, waiting for things to boil over. And boil over they did. In one sharp motion, he shoved back, knocking his chair over, shouting that the game was rigged, that he'd already blown thousands, that it was his bankroll she was burning through. The whole room turned to look. Within seconds, security appeared. He kept insisting they had a room at the hotel, saying it like it was some kind of shield against being tossed out. But the guards didn't buy it and told him he had to leave. That's when it tipped from anger into something sadder. The hotel's customer service desk sat just a few feet from where I was playing, so I could hear him pleading with the staff. His voice cracked as he begged them not to kick him out. He claimed he'd already paid for the room, said he didn't have money for another, said he'd lost too much to go anywhere else. The rage was gone, replaced with desperation. You could hear it in every word. Eventually, it must have worked, because after a while, things settled down. He stalked off, still fuming, but at least quiet, leaving the blackjack pit buzzing in his wake. I went back to my little stack of reds, but I couldn't shake the image. Here was a guy known all over the internet, someone in an industry that thrives on visibility, and yet he was broke, playing minimums at El Cortez and begging the front desk not to put him out on the street. It made me wonder, is the adult industry really that brutal, even for people who are semi-famous? Or was this just a man who'd squandered whatever money he had chasing a lifestyle he couldn't hold on to? Either way, I kept circling back to the same thought. If you're willing to do something the whole world can see, something you probably wouldn't want your family or hometown to know about, shouldn't it at least make you rich?
Story number 3. The Role That Changed It All.
I once saw something at a craps table that still sticks with me to this day. It was one of those late nights where you've already lost more than you'd like, but you're not quite ready to pack it in yet. I was hanging around a $10 table, tossing out modest bets, chatting with the other players, just trying to stretch what little money I had left. Then he appeared. An older man, dressed simply, almost understated. No flashy jewelry, no designer watch, no entourage following behind him. But there was something about the way he carried himself, the steady confidence in his stride, the way he scanned the table like it was a familiar map, that made it obvious he wasn't just another casual player. This guy had money, and probably plenty of it. He slid into position without a word, stacking his chips with practiced ease. And these weren't the chips I was used to handling. While I was messing around with greens and reds, he was setting down colors I'd rarely even seen outside of a casino brochure. Purples, oranges, even a crisp $1,000 chip resting casually on the rail like it was nothing more than a drink coaster. But then the losses started. Hand after hand, roll after roll, his stack melted away. He didn't curse, didn't slam the rail, didn't even sigh, just grew sharper in his movements, faster in the way he tossed chips in, more rigid each time the dice turned against him. You could sense the frustration tightening in his body language, even if his face gave nothing away. Whatever he was losing, it had to be in the tens of thousands. Then came the moment everything shifted. A new shooter picked up the dice, and the table fell quiet. I held back my bets, curious to see what would happen. That's when the older man suddenly flooded the layout. He spread his chips across the board like a storm. Massive stacks on the pass line with full odds, the hard ways, the field, big place bets. He went all in on a single throw. It looked reckless, insane even, especially after the beating he'd just taken. The dice went up, they landed. 8. Hard. And in an instant, the whole table erupted. The field paid out. The hard way paid out. His place bets hit. The odds behind the line raked in mountains of chips. Dealers scrambled, arms moving furiously to stack, count, and push the avalanche of winnings his way. I've never seen so many chips move across a table at once. It felt like a scene ripped straight out of a Hollywood movie. And yet, through it all, the man remained stone calm. No grin, no cheer, no fist pump. He gathered the mountains of chips with cool precision, stacking them neatly in front of him as though this was just another day at the office. Then he reached into the pile, plucked a single $500 chip, slid it to the dealer with the smallest of nods, and without another word, walked away. He didn't acknowledge anyone, didn't look back. He just disappeared into the casino, leaving the rest of us frozen in silence. For a long moment, we all just stood there, trying to process what we had witnessed. I glanced at the dealer, expecting some kind of reaction, a smirk, a raised eyebrow, anything. Nothing. She went right back to work like it was business as usual. That night left me rattled. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just watched someone pull off something most gamblers only dream of. Part of me wondered if I had just watched a card counter get caught, only this one didn't run.
Story number 4. The card counter who didn't run.
I was at the Bellagio a few years back, sitting at a low-stakes blackjack table, just quietly playing my hands. It was one of those slow weeknights when the energy in the room feels muted. Dealers making small talk, waitresses not in a rush, players half distracted. The kind of night where nobody's pretending to be James Bond at the table. But one table over, a man stood out. Tall, mid-30s, clean-cut, dressed well enough to look sharp, but not flashy enough to draw attention. He gave off that vague vibe, like he could have been a professional, maybe an accountant, or something else entirely. His game was black chips, $100 a hand, steady, not outrageous, but compared to my table, a different league. What caught me wasn't the money, though.
It was how deliberate he was. He barely spoke, didn't touch a drink, and he didn't play every hand. Sometimes he'd sit perfectly still, just watching. His fingers tapped lightly on the felt, his eyes fixed on every single card that left the shoe. His cards, other players' cards, didn't matter. Then, with no warning, he'd slide out a $1,000 bet, win or lose, and go right back to minimums or sit out entirely. At first, I figured it was superstition, but after a few rounds, it was obvious. This guy was tracking every card and doing it with precision. I played long enough to spot it. He was counting, and counting well. The dealer seemed to catch on too. She stayed composed, but her body language shifted, movements tighter, sharper. Then the pit boss drifted over, hovering just a little too close, pretending to watch the game but really watching him. The big moment came when he pushed $2,000 forward, highest bet of the night. The cards came out, blackjack, a natural. He just gave the smallest nod, no grin, no reaction at all. And right then, two men in dark suits appeared behind him. Not casino floor security, not bouncers. These were the quiet kind, the ones you don't argue with. One leaned down, said something low enough none of us could hear. The man didn't flinch. He pushed back his chair, gathered up his stack of chips, blacks and purples, neat and calm, and stood. No resistance, no argument. The only words he spoke all night were to the pit boss. "Your count's off by 2. Tell your dealer." He gave the faintest smile, almost a wink, and strolled off. No rush, no looking over his shoulder. The suits didn't stop him. They just watched him as he melted into the casino crowd like he'd never been there. After he left, I asked the dealer straight out if he'd been counting. She just gave a small smile and said, "Not anymore." You always hear stories about counters being dragged into back rooms or thrown out on the curb. But the real players, they don't panic, they don't argue. They leave on their own terms because they already know they've beaten the house. And sometimes the casino lets them walk, just to remind them who still owns the floor. Counting isn't against the law. All they can really do is bar you, take your face out of the game.
Story number 5. He only bet on one number. I've been a cocktail waitress in Vegas long enough to know when something's off. You start to see patterns. You can clock the drunks before they spill a drink, the penny pinchers before they stiff you on tips, and the high-rolling tech bros who think paying in crypto jokes is charming. But every so often, somebody walks in and just doesn't fit the usual categories. That night, it was a little after midnight when he appeared. Older guy, maybe pushing 60, black baseball cap pulled low, cargo jacket, oversized sunglasses despite being inside under casino lights. Nothing flashy about him, but he headed straight to the high-limit roulette table like he belonged there. First strange thing, he didn't order a thing. No drink, no coffee, not even a bottle of water. Just waved me off like I was background noise. Second strange thing, he only bet on one number, 17. Every single spin, $500 a pop, one lonely chip dead center on 17. No red, no splits, no corners, nothing else. And after each spin, he'd jot something in a tiny black notebook. Win or lose, scribble. Flip to the next page. Quick, mechanical. After about 5 spins, I passed by and tried some small talk. 17 your lucky number? He looked up and, without smiling or blinking, said, "No, it's not luck, it's a message." Then he went right back to writing. I've had plenty of guys mutter about the simulation while chain-smoking Marlboros, but this one felt different. Whenever the ball didn't land on 17, he muttered numbers under his breath, like he was solving some code. Then, boom, 17 hits. You'd think he'd crack a grin, fist pump something. Nothing. He calmly pockets his winnings, places another chip on 17, and writes something new in the notebook, like that win had just confirmed whatever he was tracking. Then came the predictions. After a few more losses, I hear him whisper, 3 more, then it hits again. Sure enough, 3 spins later, 17 hits again. My skin crawled a little. This wasn't some lucky streak. He looked tense, like he was racing against a clock only he could see. During a pit change, I asked the dealer about him. No player card, no comp record. Security said he just walked in off the street. No ID on file, no hotel reservation, just a ghost in a cap. About an hour later, he stood up, didn't cash out, tucked the notebook under his arm, glanced at the table, and said quietly, "They'll shift it tomorrow. New pattern." Then walked straight out without a drink, a tip, or a goodbye. I was curious enough to ask the floor manager later. Apparently, he's been there multiple times over the years. Always different hats, different clothes, always roulette, always just one number, always taking notes. And here's the strangest part. It's not always 17. Sometimes it's 14, sometimes 6. Once it was 0. But the ritual never changes. Same number fixation, same quiet obsession, same scribbled notebook full of whatever code he's cracking.
Story number 6. Life of a high roller.
I've been a cocktail waitress in Vegas long enough to know when something's off. You start to see patterns. You can clock the drunks before they spill a drink, the penny pinchers before they stiff you on tips, and the high-rolling tech bros who think paying in crypto jokes is charming. But every so often, somebody walks in and just doesn't fit the usual categories. That night, it was a little after midnight when he appeared. Older guy, maybe pushing 60, black baseball cap pulled low, cargo jacket, oversized sunglasses despite being inside under casino lights. Nothing flashy about him, but he headed straight to the high-limit roulette table like he belonged there. First strange thing, he didn't order a thing. No drink, no coffee, not even a bottle of water. Just waved me off like I was background noise. Second strange thing, he only bet on one number, 17. Every single spin, $500 a pop, one lonely chip dead center on 17. No red, no splits, no corners, nothing else. And after each spin, he'd jot something in a tiny black notebook. Win or lose, scribble. Flip to the next page. Quick, mechanical. After about 5 spins, I passed by and tried some small talk. 17 your lucky number? He looked up and, without smiling or blinking, said, "No, it's not luck, it's a message." Then he went right back to writing. I've had plenty of guys mutter about the simulation while chain-smoking Marlboros, but this one felt different. Whenever the ball didn't land on 17, he muttered numbers under his breath like he was solving some code. Then, boom, 17 hits. You'd think he'd crack a grin, fist pump something. Nothing. He calmly pockets his winnings, places another chip on 17, and writes something new in the notebook like that win had just confirmed whatever he was tracking. Then came the predictions. After a few more losses, I hear him whisper, 3 more, then it hits again. Sure enough, 3 spins later, 17 hits again. My skin crawled a little. This wasn't some lucky streak. He looked tense, like he was racing against a clock only he could see. During a pit change, I asked the dealer about him. No player card, no comp record. Security said he just walked in off the street. No ID on file, no hotel reservation, just a ghost in a cap. About an hour later, he stood up, didn't cash out, tucked the notebook under his arm, glanced at the table, and said quietly, "They'll shift it tomorrow. New pattern." Then walked straight out without a drink, a tip, or a goodbye. I was curious enough to ask the floor manager later. Apparently, he's been there multiple times over the years. Always different hats, different clothes, always roulette, always just one number, always taking notes. And here's the strangest part. It's not always 17. Sometimes it's 14, sometimes 6. Once it was 0. But the ritual never changes. Same number fixation, same quiet obsession, same scribbled notebook full of whatever code he's cracking. That's all the Vegas stories I've got for tonight. Thanks for sticking with me. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe. I've got even more strange and wild casino tales to share with you soon. And hey, if you got your own unusual or unforgettable Las Vegas story, drop them in the comments. I might even feature them in a future video. Just remember, keep it clean so YouTube doesn't hide it. Let's see if we can push this channel past 1,000 subscribers. Appreciate all the support, and I'll catch you in the next one.